the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we are in beautiful Arcata, and it is about to sunset, and I am with the Humboldt County Growers Alliance. So I normally do introductions, but because we have 4 guests today, I am going to have everybody introduce themselves.
I'm Nik Erickson with Full Moon Farms. We're located in central eastern Humboldt County.
I'm Dylan Mattole with Mattole Valley Sungrown, and we are located out at the north end of the Lost Coast in the Mattole Valley in Honeydew.
Howdy, this is Hannah Whyte. I own and operate Emerald Queen Farms with my husband, and we're in Willow Creek, northeast Humboldt County on the Trinity County line.
Oh, and Hannah, what do you do with HCGA?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm the policy chair as well as vice president. Yeah.
Awesome.
On the board, thank you.
And my name is Natalynne Delapp, and I am one of the co-founders and executive director for the Humboldt County Growers Alliance.
And for our listeners, can you tell us what the Humboldt County Growers Alliance is?
Absolutely. So we are a nonprofit mutual benefit trade association, and we represent all license types that are based in Humboldt County. The majority of our operators are, of course, farmers, but we have manufacturers, distributors, and retailers that we also work to represent. And we work on government affairs and advocacy, advocating and representing our members' interests. We work on market development, targeting and trying to develop markets, having communities understand the value of what we have in Humboldt County, and then education. And we're always seeking to educate ourselves, our members, policymakers, and consumers.
Thank you so much for that. So this month, well, actually, we're in December now, but the month of November, we highlighted small craft farmers, and that's something that as of this year, we're going to be doing every November on Planted. So I am so happy to have the 4 of you here to round out the conversation. We have a lot to talk about today. What do you want to talk about first? Because there is a lot to unpack. We are at a critical time in our industry in California. There are a lot of challenges. And one of the things that I've noticed as somebody who works with policy is that the people who actually make this possible, the farmers, are having some of the most challenging times.
Well, from a organizational perspective, it's been challenging. We formed on the eve of the passage of Prop 64. We came into this, most of our farmers are legacy operators, people who were part of the traditional system, and they volunteered to come into this new paradigm that California created. And, I think that everybody really put their best foot forward. They wanted to participate and be part of something. They want to keep their kids safe, and they wanted to build successful businesses. And, we're 8 years in now, and what the promises that were made were not what we have today. It has been very, very challenging for farmers to navigate the system that with constantly moving bars and goalposts, just the massive investment, people have invested their life savings into this process, and we're seeing just rapid decline of our farms, of our businesses, of our economy here on the North Coast. Our areas are struggling financially, and it's not just cannabis farmers, it's all of the ancillary companies, our small businesses, and just the economic depression that we are suffering from because of this transition. Of course, there's global issues that are going on and national issues, but there are a lot of challenges, and we need to keep working together. We need to be working with our local governments and our state governments to be able to create a roadmap out of this. And this is Humboldt County. We are known for agriculture, and we need to be supporting our agricultural industry. And I'll say, as cannabis, we want it to be treated as agriculture, not as a extraordinary crop that needs to be so highly regulated and taxed with extraordinary things as if it is plutonium, when what we're talking about is a plant.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a few months ago, I was talking to Congressman Earl Blumenauer about this, and we were talking about legalization on a federal scale. And I was asking him about how long it was taking to pass things, what it was going to look like. And one of the things that he said is, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We already have, everything in place with other industries that we should just be using those markers to create good policy. And in California, we pretty much did anything but that. And I think that one thing that our listeners may not realize, and you mentioned it, is the fact that it's not just about the agriculture, because if you go through the towns up here, you'll notice it's a lot different than it was, say, well, not even 10 years ago. There is a lot of closed businesses. There's a lot of economic depression. And, the cannabis industry in many ways was supporting a really vibrant culture and community up here. And it's been very impactful. And then also when we talk about people not being able to cultivate, not being able to survive in this market, it seems like you're losing a lot of culture and institutional knowledge because of that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like we know here in Humboldt County that the vast majority of our economy is based on cannabis. The recent crop report that came out of our ag department estimates, cannabis, even at this depressed rate, is still a greater dollar amount than all of our other agricultural products, including timber combined. And so, here in Humboldt County, it's like our supervisors, our county has been relatively supportive. I mean, it could have been better, but it could also be a lot worse. But I mean, we have a reasonably functional supervisors, our ag commissioner, even our sheriff have been pretty cool. And our planning department is pretty functional. I mean, again, there's always stuff to complain about, but we're asking our supervisors, like, hey, you guys need to stop putting this extraordinary tax on our cannabis farmers. Enough is enough, and this is the only industry that is taxed just for the right to exist. And so, the county needs to really understand that you can't squeeze blood from a turnip and that there's nothing else to give. And, everybody said, like, you're killing the golden goose. And, we really need to find pathways where our county can support our farmers to help keep money in their pockets.
Yeah, it seems like there's a major disconnect because it does have the possibility to create so much abundance. I mean, one thing that I used to think about when we were in the 215 days was the fact that we could have people making money, having commerce, but also the fact that there was so much that was going back to communities. I mean, even in San Francisco, we saw that too. And it was actually, I found it to be a really interesting model for lack of a better word, of compassionate, mindful capitalism. And being that, Humboldt County is such a beautiful place, not only is it an opportunity for agriculture, but as people get more interested and engaged in cannabis, it's an opportunity to actually come and see what's going on, a chance for cannabis tourism, for more visitor dollars to be coming into the county. Not to the point where, you guys are like, everybody go home. You're messing it up. But to be able to come and really appreciate what's going on here. And it seems like, not only are you dealing with stuff with the county, but it's multi-tiered. I mean, throughout California, you deal with the state, you deal with the county, and then sometimes you're dealing with cities and municipalities too, because in Oakland, it's incredibly expensive to buy cannabis because you have state tax, and then you have the Oakland cannabis tax. And then, we have our lovely excise tax for every time that the cannabis changes hands. So when you're looking at your county here, because we really want to be talking about Humboldt today, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see that we need to change? And when you've been talking, what are some of the things that you'd like to do to change it. What do you need help with, and what can the public do to help with that as well? Because it seems like a lot of the policies that we're seeing that are creating issues with the industry almost seem like a sin tax in a way, and there's stigma around it. And part of it is because our policymakers still don't understand the normalization of cannabis, and that the people who, are voting for them, that they need for their jobs, are also the same people who are consuming, paying taxes, being upstanding members of their communities.
Well, I will say that, agritourism, and this is agritourism, cannatourism, and the county needs to reduce some of the regulatory roadblocks that would allow visitors to go out to, say, like Dylan's farm. Perfect example, you're out in the Mattole. It would be wonderful if there's 4, 5, 6 farms out between Petrolia and Honeydew. And then there's services, which are businesses that can be supporting that kind of agritourism. We need our county to sort of, not, again, treat it extraordinary and just treat it like it's a you pick blueberry place. That being said, we do have a company called HumboldtCannabisTours.com. People can come up. We do have a number of farms that do have active opportunities for visitors. Even our county got out of the way and is allowing farm stays. So if you come up and you're looking at either like Hip Camp or Airbnb or VRBO, and you type in farm stay, you may be able, and you look around at the pictures, because sometimes it's not overt, but people can come up and stay in a really amazing yurt or glamping situation or off-grid cabin with farmers and be able to enjoy this place. And that is happening now. So, what can people do? Come on up and visit us. Come visit us.
Give the gift that everyone will remember this holiday season, the 12 J's of Christmas gift box. This limited edition collection features 12 premium pre-rolls from 12 sun-grown farms in Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity counties. It's the ultimate gift for craft cannabis lovers and a way to support small farmers in the Emerald Triangle. Hurry, quantities are limited. Reserve yours now at emeraldtrianglecraft.com. So let's talk about some of the pain points. I want to get into policy, but I also want to get into the lack of opportunity for people to know who you are, to know your products. How do you reach out to people? Because with compliance in the issue, there's a lot of issues with advertising and outreach, which for any company would be a massive hardship. But how do you do this in a highly regulated market?
Well, advertising and marketing is its own position in itself, and it's extremely cost prohibitive. So a lot of what we're doing is collaborative. You also have to, it's really, really authentic and grassroots. You got to reach your core base and not try to educate up. You start with your core base and then educate others into what you're doing as a craft. I think that there's a real lack of presence at the retail environment for consumers to just easily convert over from commodity based brands, and there's total brand saturation that's basically all filling their jars from the same pool of farms down in Santa Barbara, Ventura, those kind of places. That it's commodity weed. It's what it is. It's commodity cannabis, and we're having to fight with those same price points, doing what we do. And we're adapting. We are making big adjustments, but everything that we do out on our farms is also, it costs us more per gram to get to production. If you live an hour and a half out in the hills, just simple things as deliveries cost extra. There's things being that far off the pavement that we have to take account for and factor into our price points. And we're working at very slim, if any, margins right now. Those things can change. I think that if the consumer, when they walk into a retail outlet, if they ask for sun-grown or that craft cannabis or that organic model, and I do believe that that's coming. It's just the lack of opportunity for the consumer. They walk into a retail outlet and they got the options that they have. And so competing with some of these more deep pocket, well-funded brands that's been a challenge for all of us. So I think, touching on the collaborative Humboldt County branding for all of us, we get asked a lot, are you in competition with this farm or that farm? Absolutely not. There's so few craft farms left, and we are very much collaborative with other farms, sharing information, genetics, SOPs, and when we do go national, and it should be legalized, it shouldn't be decriminalized. When we do go national, there's going to be a complete lack of quality to sustain what is coming with that market, even if it's, like we touched on before in a previous conversation about if you're modeling after the craft versus domestic beers, average is about 10%. I think California's 22% craft market. If we're looking at 10% nationwide, there's not enough cannabis in the 7 craft producing counties in California to fulfill those needs. So at that point, we will see a craft price point that will separate from the commodity price point, and farms will start kind of getting recognized for what they're doing. People just have to seek out quality and know that there's a lot of passion and intent being put into the products that are coming from these small farms, where that's not the case with these commodity spreadsheet farms. It all boils down to the bottom line, satisfying investors, that type of thing. So they're going to sacrifice and cut corners. Inputs are going to come at a cheaper price. They're not tending to their land, their heart and soul isn't being put into the property that they're growing the cannabis on. And all those factors will show in the finished product. And I'm a very big believer in this plant will give you back what you put into it. And I've cut corners before, and it's shot me in the foot because of that. And when you give it your all and you tend to it, and the weather cooperates, and everything kind of lines out, you come out with something beautiful, and you want to share that with people. And getting that on the shelves is our next big hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that people have talked about with cannabis, the cannabis industry and cultivation on the negative side has been environmental impact, but what they're not taking into consideration is that craft farmers are stewards of the land. And we see that again and again. All the different farms with all the different styles, the stewardship of the land has been one of the biggest things. And I think educating the public about this and the value behind it is huge. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about the wine industry versus cannabis. And you think about wine in the 70s and early 80s, like back when my mom was drinking like Blue Nun and Lancers, and the landscape has changed as we've educated consumers about what is actually good and creating opportunities for experiences around it. We've become more educated with our palate, and therefore we're voting with our wallet with what we want. And I think that they did try to revive Blue Nun the other year, but I don't think that it worked so well. But I think that's, that education for people is a huge thing. And like you were saying, when we get into interstate commerce, what are people going to want?
Humboldt weed.
That's right.
Yeah, unfortunately, before legalization, Humboldt didn't have regulation that protected our really incredible microclimates from overcultivation. There were big parcels of TPZ land that got subdivided. And unfortunately, there was, environmental degradation that happened as a result of greedy cannabis cultivation because there was opportunities to hide in the hills. And although we've seen incredible retraction in our community and there are so many less cultivators, the cultivators that we have here in Humboldt now are producing cannabis with the utmost integrity. Our stewardship for the land is represented by and through our regulations. We are the most highly regulated water users in the state of California in Humboldt County because our regulations reflect the incredible sensitivity in our environment, and also that environment, it's like as we can educate on the products that's coming from our environment is informing the products that we're producing, and we're seeing the benefits of that at the state fair. We're seeing the benefits of that at the Emerald Cup. Every time Humboldt and the Emerald Triangle goes to compete, we're bringing in golds, whether it's award-winning rosin, which I think is like the most appreciable product in cannabis, to wine, because you're able to really pull out the essence of that live plant and put it and trap it in this little jar through this incredible mechanical extraction, and we're just using water and energy and the incredible soil and practices that develop this plant. And I think we've got so much opportunity here in Humboldt, when just even saying the name, asking for Humboldt, sharing our name, sharing our flowers, so that people can remember the culture that is the heartbeat of cannabis in America. It's like we were producing an incredible amount of flower for the country before this incredible saturation. And also that opened up the minds. Like, how many states now do we have medical cannabis access for patients and recreational cannabis? So, it's definitely got a lot of challenges in the space right now, but we do have a lot of opportunities. We worked really hard with CDFA and have incredible Appalachian policy program that is like so close, but not yet rolled out with the Department of Cannabis Control. And that's something that can bring incredible value because the program is so robust, because it has so many guidelines to really protect and uphold the products that are produced from the place, from the region, with the practices, and can give consumers the integrity and quality and trust in the product that I think is really paramount right now. It's lacking in the market. We're lacking access. Consumers are lacking access because of the way Prop 64 was voted in with local control, which is important. We have 55% of the state doesn't have access to legal cannabis. That's a serious problem. That's not why California voted in to have legal cannabis, so that most of the state doesn't have access.
Right. And a lot of the state that does have access doesn't necessarily have access to flowers or products that come from flower that are as premium as what's being cultivated here.
Yeah, absolutely. But we do, like I said, have these platforms that are showing up, like to be able to compete cannabis at the state fair, even if just on the scientific metrics. Like our area, our terroir is producing award-winning cannabis.
Absolutely. I was just at Meal of the Hash Queen's Dabadoo event in October, and I was really excited when, I'll say it was sharing first place when Dylan's flowers were in one of the hashes, and I was like, wait a minute, I know him, and I've smoked his rosin, and it's amazing.
And it wasn't just me. It was another, I shared that award with another Humboldt farmer and another farmer that's growing, dry farm in her case, very small scale, regenerative practices. And like Hannah mentioned, this is just what we're seeing time and time again in these awards, where we are competing in many of the cases, not all of them, but, up against the largest producers from the southern end of the state, and bringing home awards. And this really speaks to the climate, the culture, the history, the heart, and all of that. And, pre-legalization, I remember seeing a report years ago that the Emerald Triangle produced what was estimated at 70% of the cannabis smoked and sold in the United States. And when we all embarked into this legalization, we had a level of confidence whether we voted for it or in many cases not. We embraced it and said, this is what we're doing and we're going to move forward. And I think we all had this belief that, we have the reputation to build off of. What we didn't expect was that we would have massive agricultural regions that never produced jumping into the game and growing, in some cases, 5 million square feet in one cultivation site. So, that's the market glut that's out there. That's the commodity product that Nik's talking about that is, dominating the shelf space in a plethora of varied brands that have different appeals to various demographics. But a lot of that is the same product coming from the same several 3 or 4, maybe 5 producers, whether it's indoor or mixed light. So, what we have up here is something different. And I think the consumer does know it. It's just they're not really being offered it right now. And so, what we need right now as we wait for a bigger market to open up, we're really in this like treading water space. And this is where policy comes into play. What we really need is for the state to get out of our way and quit putting up roadblocks. And this is what we see time and time again, is we ask for policy, we work on policy that can maybe just make it a little bit easier, and we actually don't get it. And that's frustrating. And so, we're kind of in a just holding space, and we still believe that there is a market for what we have, because we know that the Humboldt brand is real. And that when you travel around the world and you say you're from Humboldt, some people will say, oh, cool, that's where they have redwood trees. That is typically always, in my experience, secondary to, ooh, weed. Like, that is a brand that's recognized around the world. So we just need to open up these borders so we can get it out there and share it with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking to Matt Kurth, who does the cannabis tours, and he was talking about how he gets people from all over the world coming to do tours, and places where it's not even available, and the tears that come to people's eyes when they're actually able to see it growing and to experience it, because where they come from, they don't have safe access, or their lives or their personal freedoms could be in danger if somebody knew that they were partaking or even interested in the subject. And I think it's, there's a wonderful opportunity to really set the stage for how things should be, because of all the institutional knowledge that you all do have up here and what you're creating. What are some of the policies today that are the most important that you're working on trying to change?
I mean, access to consumers through direct-to-consumer marketing is something that we've invested years of energy into. That has been, by our organization, over the last couple of years, identified as really the number one policy change that we need to see. From an environmental regulatory standpoint, I mean, there's just all sorts of hoops that we have to jump through. In reality, at this point, we've jumped through them, and we've accomplished these high standards. And so it would certainly be wonderful to have some, just less cop kind of type of regulatory oversight, to where you feel like you're constantly being inspected as if you're doing something wrong. And this comes from this like being treated, as Natalynne talks about, like something so extraordinary, when really we're just farmers growing plants. So those are some issues where we could certainly see some improvement. And then, of course, the cost of everything from a regulatory standpoint. We pay all sorts of crazy fees that other industries don't pay, whether it's to water boards, Department of Fish and Wildlife, all of these agencies we pay special fees for that nobody else pays. And so there could be relief there from a regulatory standpoint. Some of the other things that, there's a lot of things. And I think what we're all really at the point where it's like Prop 64 just is frankly broken. And so we'd like to start new and figure out how to do this differently, because what's in place isn't really working. But, some of the most simple things that a consumer might not understand is that when we as farmers sell our product into a mandated third-party distribution system where we cannot sell direct to the consumer or without a distribution license of our own, even directly to retail, we're mandated to go through a third-party distributor. There is no recourse if the retailer or the distributor decides not to pay us. The state has zero mechanism in place to protect us as the farmers, who are really the basis of this entire industry, to get paid. There is not anybody to go to and say, I gave all this product to this company and they just decided not to pay me. Even bankruptcy doesn't work because that's a federal process. So these are some of the challenges that you just don't see unless you're in it, and that are sometimes hard to explain to the consumer.
Yeah, I mean the AR crisis is a huge thing. I'm actually moderating a panel on that very soon, and it's with people who are in our industry from all over the United States on the panel, and it is one of the biggest pain points, and one of the things that really shows that we are held by the stigma, because we wouldn't be seeing this in any other industry. And when we look at how much, and I think we've discussed this before, but approximately, do you know how much money is owed to farmers in Humboldt?
I don't, because again, this is something that's not tracked by the metrics of the regulation, or the supposed track and trace, which is a third-party private corporation that we pay for in our licensing. They don't track anything other than where the product moves. They don't track any of the accounting of sales or any of that. So I do know that there was a report maybe a year ago or so that talked about toxic debt in our industry of over 600 million, but that was statewide. So we've seen some of the largest distribution and fulfillment companies in the last couple of years go out of business. I don't think I know a single farmer who hasn't been affected by that. I personally, have a lot of money that is lost because the retailers that my partners were working with, partners as manufacturing and distribution partners, they're not able to collect because the retailers weren't paying their distributor, and their distributor went out of business and is gone. And so that's just lost. And in these type of actions, the farmer is not even in the equation of who's going to get paid. It starts with the state of California collecting their taxes. So if there's any assets to seize or anything like that, we're never going to see it. So yeah, it's a massive amount. There isn't a single farmer in Humboldt County that doesn't have some amount of debt that they probably won't ever recover.
Right. And then when you look at the high cost of maintaining your farm and your business and all the things that are baked into having to pay the state, all the testing, all the regulatory things, how does a farmer break even, much less make a profit?
I mean, if a farmer's making a profit, it's an incredibly razor thin margin right now. Just the cost of production is at or below, at or above the cost of wholesale anyways. And the retail market's better for branded consumer packaged goods, but as Nik was mentioning, it's just almost impossible to get shelf space. And so, most of our farms are doing collaborative type branding with other farms and other distributors and folks that are out there with a sales team and all that. Most of us just don't have the bandwidth. I mean, my farm is 2 hours from town. And when I say town, I'm talking about Arcata here. So it's not really feasible for me to go to the Bay Area twice a week and do sales calls. So and the system doesn't allow it. So we are mandated to go through these third-party distributors. So we're very removed from our consumers and even our retail consumers.
Yeah, the system is incredibly broken. And one of the things that we've seen, and this was one of the distributors that you were mentioning, going into receivership has been one of the biggest problems for a lot of the companies, because then everyone comes calling, everything gets shut down, and everybody who's given their product loses out not only on their product, but whatever payments are owed to them, and there's no recourse. And we're seeing, and this is a national issue, not just in California.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at the bigger picture, part of the problem with that is that we don't have real banking. And the Safe Banking Act has failed time and time again to make it through. And so until the federal government backs off on their stance on our money going into the banking system, We're either working with small credit unions who are doing in-house banking for us on a limited scale. So a lot of the protections that come with all of this, also upstream have to do with the bank. And we don't even have access to that. Yeah. So that is it's a huge issue, and it's not just our state.
No. And it's also part of investors being educated on the fact that, and this was one thing that used to drive me crazy, like when we were looking at 64, and I would have people coming up to me saying, what should I be investing in cannabis? And I would look at them and say, the first thing you need to understand is that this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a long game. And if you want to get involved in a nascent industry where sometime in the future you will profit from it, then do it. But if you're going into this thinking that you're going to be flipping this cash and making a lot of money, you're barking up the wrong tree. And we're still having these same conversations. And how many states now have legalized, and we're still having these same conversations? It's really crazy, because I see this as a twofold problem. It's stigma and it's greed. And the people who are directly involved with making the industry happen aren't involved in either of these things. It's everybody that's circling around them that's creating these issues.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Yeah, I mean, there are politicians out there that genuinely care about the people in their jurisdictions and their businesses.
Absolutely.
And stuff. There are also a lot of politicians that when they signed onto regulation and decided to vote for it, it was strictly based on that they saw a big ticket of tax money coming their way. And now that is starting to diminish, what we're seeing is just a lack of interest. It's like, well, all of a sudden they just don't really care anymore because they never really did care. So it's absolutely stigma. It was stigma that, put us, where we were in the first place for 70 years. And now we're dealing with the stigma as we come out of prohibition that, it's this, sin tax. This is this incredibly profitable business that there's all this money. The government wants a big chunk of it. And that's what they tried to do. And it's not really working out for them very well either. So it's not working really for anyone. It's not working for the consumer. It's not working for the only people that it's not working for the governments who are trying to collect taxes. It's working for some of the companies that are the corporations that make money on licensing fees and products of that, like the track and trace. Like, these guys are probably doing all right, but generally it's not working for anyone. And it's definitely not, from what I understand, working for the consumers out there.
No, it's not. And I remember it was after the first year of legalization, the state was really disappointed because they didn't make the tax revenue that they thought that they were going to. But when you break it down and you look at the fact of how much more expensive at that time cannabis became, and then they're wondering, well, now we have to deal with enforcement with an illicit market. It's like, well, you kind of set that up because there are people who actually need cannabis as medicine. And if they can't afford to get it from their dispensaries because it's just chock full of taxes and overhead, where are they going to go? And now where legalization was supposed to be a solution to saving, enforcement dollars, we're not seeing any of that.
Yeah, a big part of that toxic debt too, as far as the tax debt, as like the venture capitalist money started turning the valve off, and people started looking into other states that were coming online, and they saw, the margins were better there. A lot of these big companies weren't paying their tax debts, going back to what Dylan was saying about the lack of access to banking. And instead of paying their taxes, they would use that tax money to keep their business viable and pay the penalties on it, because the interest on that is actually lower than going after more investor money, more hard money. And so it's kind of this cycle of death, because when that company implodes, then the trickle down effect, what Grassdoor went out owing $7 million to vendors. Vendors are the last people that any of these guys think about. And it kind of goes back as a comparison to the housing bubble in 07, 08, and you had these big clipboard contractors building out subdivisions. Well, they would subcontract out everything, the plumbing, the concrete, the electrical, and so when the housing bubble started to pop, they just didn't pay any of their subcontractors. And if you have a ton of subcontractors that would have to come up with $30,000, $40,000 to sue you and take a few more years of their time to try to get the money that's owed to them, it's just not feasible. A lot of these small contractors just walk away from that debt and just eat it. We don't even have that option. So it's a massive hurdle that we're basically having to double front, triple front our product down the food chain and hope that money comes back to us. And finding people that are like morally grounded in this industry it's rare. It's rare. Or that where the system's working well enough to where that money is being made and they can afford to pay the people that actually put the 12 months in to produce that, because it's not just a seasonal thing for us. We start growing next year's genetics last July. We're taking our cuttings, we're doing those things, and we're paying those power bills and trying to keep these mothers alive and doing all this. So our work it's year round. And there was this misconception that we're making all this extra money up here that's just not there. And whether they felt like we can afford to take these losses or not, we're the last thing on their mind when the bills come due.
Yeah, it's an outdated view. It is not like when I first started in the industry and things were like $3,000 a pound. It actually takes my breath away what the price is. Actually, for our listeners, will you tell them the average price per pound now of cannabis? I
would say $400 in bulk, and that's about $3.10 an eighth that goes to us, and that's pretty average. I know people taking less, and for really, really good product right now. I think if people are getting $500 for the top tier, maybe light assist, which is going to come with other costs, it's in that range, but it's not above $4 an eighth. And so when you're seeing $45 an eighth at the retail market, where's all that at?
Yeah. I think it's really important for consumers to know how the cake is baked.
I've heard prices as low as $250, which is well below the cost of production. And I just want to say, if for a listener, you're thinking $250 a pound, they grew to 1,000 pounds, they must have a ton of money. No, because it cost way more to grow those 1,000 pounds than $250 a pound. And so it's when Dylan said razor thin margins, there might be $10, $15, $20 a pound profit, maybe. So it's when we're saying razor thin margins, it's not working for our farmers. And, and to this point of it's not working for consumers either. And for farmers that are selling packaged product to distribution, they might be making $4 an eighth that then again is sold and it's at the markup. And so for the consumer, your out the door price might be $45 or $50 with all of the taxes. And you think that you're supporting small farms, but it's not actually getting back into the farmers' pockets. And that is really the hardest thing. But, we need you, listeners to be asking for Humboldt cannabis, ask for sun-grown, ask for Emerald Triangle, ask where this is coming from. Because, those shiny packages, as Dylan said, that might be coming from 3 or 4 different farms in the Central Valley. And I ask you also to just maybe look beyond the packaging. The shiniest thing is probably the thing you don't want. So, we need you as consumers, because when we talk to retailers, sometimes they'll say to us, consumers don't want sun-grown. And I know that that's not the case. Or they'll say, oh, I don't want that because it's not testing high enough on a potency standard. And I know that that is not the case either, because I know a lot of older consumers, and even frankly, people like my age, and I don't want a mild acid trip every time I smoke a joint. Like, I want low octane weed, and a lot of people want that. And so we need you to ask for that. Tell them, no, I'm not looking for the 30% stuff, because we're growing these amazing genetics and different varietals and stuff that can really help you, but we need you to ask for them. Otherwise, the retailers tell us that's not what they want. So we need you to tell the retailers this is what we want. Otherwise, we don't have a chance. Otherwise, it's stizzy all day, every day, glass house, and our markets will go away and we will go extinct. And that we don't want that to ever happen. So it's like, we really need the support of our consumer base of people who enjoy cannabis to speak up and help us so that we can get the product to you that I know you want.
Yeah, that's so true. And honestly, when we're looking at, the race to the top with THC percentages, for you listening out there, THC is not the end all be all. And when we're looking at sun-grown cannabis, you have all these other things that come into play. We talk about the entourage effect. All these terpenes and cannabinoids, besides THC and CBD, work together to create the nuance and the spectrum of feel. And with lab testing the way it is now, and if any of you have listened to the news, we have a real problem with lab testing in our state. Not only are we dealing with heavy metals, pesticides, what have you, and these are not coming from craft farmers, but we're also having incorrect numbers for cannabinoid counts. So really, really think critically when you're choosing what you're trying. And if you're listening and you're in a state where sun-grown cannabis isn't available because of, your environment, and that happens. If you live in Arizona, you're smoking indoor cannabis, and because we don't have interstate commerce, unfortunately, you can't experience this. But when you do come to California and you visit us, you need to try it, because it will change the way you look at it.
Just to I'm glad you mentioned that about the testing, because that is important that consumers understand that if you're buying based, there's a lot of problems with buying based on potency. You've mentioned some of them as far as the entourage effect and the experience of what you're getting, but just on a nuts and bolts level, you can't believe that number anyways. Like, we don't have reliable testing standards in this state to where, there's a lot of variables on what that number is. And there's a lot of unscrupulous, basically don't trust that number. So if this is what you're going into a store and saying, I'd like to get the highest potency weed that you've got, that doesn't really mean anything. And you're going to probably pay more for it and get a lower quality product than you could if you actually took a minute, talked to the bud tender, did some research. And it's really a simple question. Say, not where's this brand from, where's this product grown? Every bit of flower that goes out in the state of California will identify where it was grown. And that is a question you can ask your bud tender. And sadly, most of them are going to give you the name of the brand. And you can follow up with that and say, well, can you tell me where it was grown? Like, what region? They might say no. And then you can help them educate themselves and say, well, I'm a consumer and I'm interested. Like, when I go to the grocery store, I like to know where my food comes from. Why is cannabis different? Why are consumers not asking these questions? If you start as consumers asking at your dispensaries, from your delivery services, where does this product actually come from? And then do a little research. They'll start making that information available because, you're demanding it. And so that's where you can help us. And really, it's not just, don't do it just to help us, do it to help yourself. You'll get a better product by asking these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And ask for sun-grown cannabis. One thing that I've been really liking is that we're seeing more people that are in our industry get more into the connoisseurship of cannabis, and they're reporting out more about their experiences and educating the public on what it's really all about and how it works with our bodies. For myself as an educator, I get more into the nuts and bolts of, what do you want to feel? What are you working with for symptom management? Let's talk about modes of use. But these people, like there's an app called Buddhist, where they're really getting into the aroma, the effects, where it's from, really engaging people. And for some people that might seem a little high level and nerdy, but it really does help you understand what the differences are and why it's so important to know that. And Hannah, what were you going to say? I see you there with the mic.
Well, just in this topic of conversation, when we're talking about, like people consuming products and also, the state of our country, economics, politics, there's so much that goes into cannabis and goes into our purchases as consumers. And like anything that we're buying, you're stating your preferences with your purchase. And we can really drive industry by demanding green products, by demanding products that are, ocean safe plastic. There's ways that we can, vote with our dollar at the marketplace that is in line with our values. And unfortunately, I think consumers, because of overtaxation, whether it's at the state level or at the cost of, everyone making a piece and then the retailers not being able to write off their taxes and needing to inflate the cost to be able to cover the cost of doing business. Like, there's so many problems creating cost where the consumer's actually purchasing just for what they can afford. And there's a lot of products in the marketplace that consumers are purchasing because they want access to cannabis, they want this plant medicine, they want an alternative to alcohol, they want an alternative to opiates and traditional pain management, or just, enjoy the plant itself. And, it's like the testing issue goes along with that, where people think that you're getting, more for your, I'm going to buy more. I need something that tests higher, like it's going to stretch out longer, like they're getting a better value for this high cost, that they're buying. And some of it's, it could be up to 30% taxes in some areas. And it's like, that's just not, puts a lot of people out. Unfortunately, we don't have production caps in the state, and we have overproduction, and there are companies that can operate at these very thin margins and, have the quarters to lose, which small farmers who are, building their businesses off of their crops just don't have, especially when we don't have direct access to consumer. And that's definitely the number one ticket for us farmers, is figuring out how we can get to consumers. Recently was able to not vend, but just do educational presentation of our farm, pop up our booth, bring some plants, and bring our farmers in pictures and talk with folks at our Humboldt kinetic race. It's a really quirky, fun race where people build these contraptions of bikes that need to be human powered, and they go down a hill and through the water and through the dunes. Like, it's a multi-day race, and people come far and wide. And it was so incredible to sit there with our last year's cannabis that I couldn't sell, but I could show people. They could smell it and they could ask me questions about it. And so many people want to be able to get that education, and it feels so good also to be able to share it and just like share the passion, the excitement of what a cultivar makes, or like how does someone want to feel, and then be able to direct them to that plant. And, it's just like, that's the full circle. That's, anyone who's still in this is in it for that. We're in it for the plants. We're in it for the people. Like, we are not in it for the profits in Humboldt here. Like, we would like some. But like, every day that I might complain about this, which it feels like sometimes, and I don't like telling that story, like, we're so committed to our community and our culture here. And it's like the culture it hasn't gone away, but it's condensed. It's like the rosin. It's just like that much more potent for everyone who's continuing to engage in the space, give their energy, raise their children on their farms through ending the drug war. Like, this is incredible social work we're doing. Like, cannabis is political. We see this coming up in, an election, and it can change the opportunities that small farmers will have as long as we can have a little less politics when it comes to pot.
Yeah, agreed. And people need to get politically active. If you want to see these changes and you want to be able to enjoy these beautiful flowers from these craft farmers that are so thoughtfully growing this for you, it's time to let the people know who depend on your votes to keep their jobs what you want. Don't be afraid to talk about using cannabis. I know some people are worried about jobs and stuff, but guess what? They changed the laws this year. You can't lose your job for using cannabis in the state of California, unless you have a federal job. That's a whole other thing altogether. But when we're looking at, sun-grown cannabis, we're looking at cannabis experiences. Successful outcomes are due to people being educated and turned on to things that work for their bodies. And when we are looking at this race to the top with THC, it's a huge disservice to consumers because they have unsatisfying experiences. They spend money on it, and then they're just like, forget it. I'm just gonna go with what I know. And that is a very, very unfortunate thing.
It's time for the next wave of the social movement. If you look at what's happened with legalization from the early days of 215, it wasn't pot farmers that said we want. It wasn't about the farmers and the producers. It was about the patients in San Francisco who needed access to medicine. That is where we started with this, and it was a social construct, a stigma that criminalized cannabis in the first place. And then it was a social movement that started with, with patient access specific to the AIDS crisis that got us our first little chink in the, taking out a brick of the wall. And now we have in California and in how many states? I think 37 or something, some form of legalization. Most of these programs aren't really working. And us consumers can cry about it all we want and tell our stories and explain that we're working at, no margin or very slim margins. And that doesn't necessarily resonate with politicians. They think, well, I'm sorry, this is America, survival of the fittest, not our problem. We want our tax dollars. So it really comes down to we need a new social movement. We need consumers to say, you know what? We all voted this in. We voted for Prop 64. Guess what? It's not working for us. We want something different. And that's what the politicians will pay attention to, because what they actually pay attention to is getting reelected. And so if we go to them and here in California, we say, guess what, Governor Newsom, like, this isn't working. Like, you have been involved in this from day one. This was one of your flagship programs. Guess what? It's not working for us consumers. That will get some attention. But there's only so much we farmers and advocates of farmers can do to really shift this policy. We've found this time and time again. We can work on policy for years and years, and in the end, it comes down to a signature of a veto that can shut it all down. And consumers need to be aware of this, that it's like the power is in your hands, not ours.
Truth. Nik, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to say to the listeners, if there's like one thing that they could take away from this on a personal level, is that there's two types of farms in the state right now. Those that are out for themselves and those that are out for them. And what we're doing is for the consumer. We produce our flowers for them. We have a diversity of flowers because there is a diversity of personalities out there. Everybody wants something different from their flower. They want a different experience. And when you go into a retail outlet, if you ask the bud tender, what should I buy? He's going to push a house brand. He's going to push what he was told to push on you. You need to go in there and say, I'm looking for XYZ from my experience, and direct that towards, the base terpenes, that type of thing that are coming from these cultivars that these small craft farms are producing. Terpenes, they're not mandated to be tested. Some labs, if they're working with farms like everybody up here, they will show what terpenes are in each batch. But it is a THC based thing, and the most consumers, they got overwhelmed with the amount of information that comes out on a standard lab sheet. There's this entire cannabinoid profile, and so
it's
what Hannah was
intimidating.
saying, right? And so and what they're familiar with is THC, and so like Hannah was pointing to, it's how much THC, the highest level we can get for the cheapest price point. But what they're missing out on is everything that is in these great flowers that was there before testing. In the traditional market, you bought cannabis by the way it made you feel. You came back and bought something a second time if you liked it. If you didn't like it, you went to something else. You didn't have somebody else tell you what you needed to purchase. And so the system worked once, and that system is the consumer. They understood the flower. They don't need somebody else to tell them what a lab sheet should tell them what they need to smoke. And so if you want something that's energetic, or something that's lethargic, or something that helps with appetite, or something that helps fight cancer, those terpenes are available. You just need to ask those questions. And that's exactly what all of us up here are doing for you.
How can the public support the Alliance?
I encourage people to check out our website. I will say our website is for farmers. It is not a consumer-forward website. We are building out a website called askforhumboldt.com. We would love for you to join our community. Come hang out with us. Be our friends. We are really looking to be able to work with retail partners, with our branded partners, to be able to offer discounts, private events, tours, stuff like that once you become one of our members. And so if you go to askforhumboldt.com and join our community list, that would be wonderful. There are events that happened up here, like in the late fall, CannaFest here in Humboldt County, where, our farmer community and our brands with beautiful music and on the Eureka Bay. And, that was an event that brought people from all over the country. And there was even people from around the world that came to this event. And, you mentioned Matt Kurth. He is the owner-operator of this company called Humboldt Cannabis Tours. There are farms. There are opportunities for you right now. We would love for you to come up. Right now, it's winter, so maybe not right now. Maybe wait for the summer. So you got some time to plan. But, we really want to encourage you to learn about your farmers. We are showcasing our brands. Those are the products that you can, and what we want is people to be able to identify visually, these are farm products from Humboldt. Not that there's anything wrong with Trinity County or Mendocino. We love them too, but we represent Humboldt. But check us out, get involved, talk to your retailers, and, just be with us, and we'll be there for you.
Yeah, whether you're using cannabis for medicinal use, wellness, pure enjoyment, and enjoyment is a big part of wellness, choose wisely. And think about when you're looking at your produce. We were talking about, small farmers and produce earlier. Think about the tomato you get from your farmer's market versus what you get at the supermarket. And if you haven't done that, if you haven't experienced that, go out and do it. That is the difference between craft farming and cannabis and the large-scale farming that you see out in the world. And there's a place for everything, but if you're really looking for something that is satisfying, that is nuanced, and that is made with care and love, support craft farmers. Come up to Humboldt, visit, take a tour, go to some of the events. CannaFest, if you're a music lover, also has amazing music. There's a lot to discover. There's a lot to normalize. And we're counting on you as consumers and as voters to be a big part of the change, because if we don't have you, we have way less of a voice. So for people who want to reach out, what is the address for the website?
Askforhumboldt.com is our consumer-facing page, and hcga.co if you want to check out us from a trade association standpoint. Less exciting for consumers, though. But I do think everybody should be following our farmers here in their Instagram profiles.
Yes.
Yeah, we're Full Moon Farms 707.
We are Mattole Valley Sun-Grown.
Emerald Queen Farms.
And when you go to your dispensaries, don't just ask for craft farms. Ask for the farms that you're seeing that you like and you like what they're doing. Support small farmers. That's it for now, friends. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. This was wonderful seeing you all. A little heavy because we're dealing with a very trying time. But I think if we all work together, we can see it through. So thank you for hanging out with me today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for, giving some amplification to our voice. We appreciate that.
Always. You have to come back again.
We'll be here. You come back.
Right? Yes, I will be back. Thank you for your hospitality and having me.
Thank you.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.